The European securities processing industry is in turmoil. Many different players competing and cooperating on a variety of fronts. The processing business as a whole is being commoditized, and new third-party players are coming into the field. And at the center of this world is Euroclear, and I'm here very happy to be able to speak with Tim Howell, the Chief Executive of Euroclear, the player that has held the vast majority of the securities processing industry in Europe, and today finding itself being inundated by competition and collaborative differences on a number of different fronts. What is the core proposition of Euroclear going forward, given the fact that the transaction itself is highly commoditized? The value proposition of the different players, the CCPs, the new players, the new securities platforms, and so on, increasingly takes away your role as a processing house and sending you more and more back to the back end in a way. What is core to Euroclear today?
Okay, there's clearly a significant number of changes in the landscape in Europe, some of which give us a lot of opportunities, and some of which threaten some of our current businesses. The real focus and the real understanding, I think, is to look at what has evolved in the markets over the last few years. So if we take the period pre-Lehman's, the focus was all about doing things cheaper. It really didn't occur to people that significant risks, the risk of a major broker-dealer going bankrupt, was really relevant. It was technically feasible, but wouldn't happen. So consequently, there has been a move towards a more commoditization of certain things like settlement, which is what we do quite a lot of. And that is understood and was likely to continue. The big change over the last few years, and which becomes core to Euroclear, and frankly should be the core to any infrastructure provider, is risk. So pre-Lehman's, it was to do with costs, because there wasn't really an appreciation that these risks could happen. There was an understanding that they existed, but they wouldn't happen. Now, of course, the world has moved on. We've had Lehman's, we have had the move from the concerns about, say, corporate insolvency to country insolvency. Europe is clearly in some difficulties at the moment in terms of what is the future of the euro itself. And both the States and Europe, you could say some sort of North Atlantic grouping, has some political challenges at the moment as to how to address some particularly big issues. So the focus to me is to do with risk. And what that means is, when things happen, and there's not much point trying to determine what those things could be, because what we have learned over the last few years is they can be almost anything people hadn't originally thought of. That when these things happen, you are always there, you're always stable, you are financially sound, and you can carry on doing the infrastructure role. So the infrastructure firms always need to be in place.
And the market players themselves, the exchanges and the users of your service, are not necessarily loyal to you anymore. They have choice. They have choice in terms of providers. They have choice in terms of the way in which they want to have securities processing settled. Yep. So in that sense, liquidity is important, but the market will continue to be fragmented somewhat before it starts consolidating. Would you say that about the European marketplace today?
Well, what I would say is that I think people really understand risk. Our volumes, our amount of business is going up significantly because people understand that there is a value in doing this. Okay. So yes, you can have a lot of competition works. You can have a lot of people in there, and there will be some customers who say, I want it cheap and I don't care about risk.
Right.
Fine. They will go somewhere else.
But is that the biggest contributor to your volumes going up? Or is it the fact that there is a tremendous amount of interest in European government bonds?
Yeah, I think if we look at the market as a whole and then come on to sort of us within that, clearly Europe is going through a difficult time in terms of economic growth. We understand that. It is one of the slower areas of the world. We understand that. It is still a very large trading area. So there is still an awful lot of transactions that take place within Europe and people investing from outside Europe, even if they're only investing from a portfolio basis. You need something in the States, something in Asia, and something in Europe. So there is a significant amount of activity still taking place with Europe. In terms of our share within that, we have a very high market share, which is incredibly stable. And the reasoning is, different people want different things. But most people genuinely understand that there is a price to pay for having the risk appropriately addressed. And there are some who won't pay that. That's fine. They can go next door. We still have to be very conscious of price. It is just not the only thing. So we will always work, as everyone does these days, in continuous improvement, in driving down price, trying to chip a bit off the price here, a bit off the price there. It's a bit like racing car manufacturers. They try and knock off 1/10 of a gram of every single component and adds up to something worthwhile. We have a tremendous process. There's a lot of things involved. You take bits off every one, adds up to something significant. Over the last 2 or 3 years, our core pricing will have gone down something like 35%. And we can do that whilst maintaining, and this is the key point, maintaining the results you need to make the investments in people and infrastructure and systems and addressing the risk.
So at the core of your business, the critical mass of your business is still intact.
Oh, absolutely. And then let's not get too complex about this stuff. The core thing, someone said, what's our role in life? It is to, post-trade, make it easy. Post-trade made easy. You're doing this stuff to make it simple.
Yeah, you've done the make it easy part quite extensively, and right now it's a business of reducing the cost of that highly transformed process.
Well, there will always be looking at the process and saying, can we reduce the price? Okay. And that will always be the case. But again, let's look at the risk side. So in the current climate and post-Lehman's, there is now a far greater demand for collateral management. The collateral management requirement comes on the fact that banks are not as trusting of each other
and the central banks
as they were.
Allowing the markets to decide.
Precisely. So we are the people who look after $22 trillion, 22 trillion euros of assets. Those assets form the basis of collateral management. So that is a service which will increase. What are the criteria? They want someone who can look after the assets well. We do that. Someone who is independent of individual players. They will show no bias. That's what our history is of doing. And are efficient at doing this processing. We do that. So in a commoditized environment in some areas like settlement, there are other opportunities, and collateral management is the classic one at the moment, where at the moment we are having daily exposures into the collateral management in the order of 600 million euros. It's a significant increase.